and I wouldn't be anywhere else. And Liz and Al and Luther and Nathan, hey, you got the coolest looking fireman right over your shoulder there. I gotta tell you. That was the fireman looked like when I was here last time?
That's Al's father.
That's Al's father. But I gotta say something. I mean, 12 years ago, I thought that George Bush had taken this country, rushed the war, one of the worst decisions we could have made, a foreign policy blunder that was, and nobody to this day, 12 years later, thinks that the invasion of Iraq was a good idea. And it was a lot of folks like you that stood up for a guy who had, I was a selectman in my hometown and a local business guy, as Liz pointed out, and if you stand up and stay true to your values and what you believe and say loud and clear, good things can happen. And we took on a sitting senator, a former candidate for vice president of the United States, and we beat him in the primary, but I'm especially proud of two things. It was the biggest turnout in the history of Democratic primaries. Give people something to believe, stay true to your heart. And I also, a little off note, but I think we won a majority of our troops who were serving overseas in Iraq at that time. We were patriotic, true to them, but it was still a failed strategy, and that made them all the more heroic in some ways. And I think that's how we win again this November and beat the Republicans, by staying true to our progressive values and clear about what we want to do. And let me tell you, there's no question about it. The Republicans are gunning for Connecticut. They want to turn this into a red state. They want to turn this state Trump red, and we're not going to let them do it. And let me tell you what that means. I mean, it's not like there are a lot of nice moderate Republicans running on the other side of the aisle. I mean, one of their top candidates who had actually voted for reasonable gun control after Sandy Hook a few years ago just changed his vote and said he wants to come out and legalize the AR-15s. I mean, I did just the opposite. I went to Dick's Sporting Goods a couple days ago and bought some boxing gloves for the political season. And on my way out, I said, I am here for one reason, because Dick's Sporting Goods is banning the sale of AR-15s. And a few people on the way out said, that's why we're here too. I tell you, this is about not Trump values, but Connecticut values. Let me tell you what that means to me. We respect people, whatever their place of origin, whatever their background. We are stronger as a diverse community, and that's what makes Connecticut great, and that's what makes America great. And we're not going to let Donald Trump turn the clock back. It has special meaning to me because I used to be a teacher at a high school in Bridgeport, and this is 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, a lot of those kids in that school and in our class had come to this country not speaking a word of English. They spoke only Spanish. And by their senior year, 2 or 3 of them were great, and they got into UConn. We were there cheering, and then we found out that they were not eligible for a scholarship. We are not turning the clock back to the way we did it before, and we're not going to let Donald Trump do that. I'll tell you something else. I mean, we're going to be a state that respects women. And that's not what I hear coming out of Washington, D.C. right now, or Hollywood or some other places. And I'll give you just one basic example of what I mean by that. Paid family leave. That's not just a nice thing to do. It's not just the right thing to do. Most of the families in, say, Hartford are single-parent families. Most of them are single moms. And they cannot afford to keep working unless they have an opportunity to take care of somebody who's sick or whatever. They will not be able to keep working. So this is not just the right thing to do, it's a smart thing to do. It allows everybody to stay back in the game. We need everybody working. We need everybody with that opportunity. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm also going to be somebody, look, as Liz said, I started up a business, spent my whole life starting up business, creating jobs. I do worry that we're a state that has an economy that's smaller than it was 10 years ago. We have fewer people working today than we had 30 years ago. We're going to get this state growing again so young people have great opportunity going forward. But we're also going to be a fair economy. And that's my pledge to you. What I mean by a fair economy where everybody's included. I'm the one candidate in this race who's going to be fighting for a $15 minimum wage. And I like to tell people a $15 minimum wage not only just lifts up those folks at the minimum wage, and most of them are, again, those moms in Hartford are, not earning 78 cents on the dollar, earning a lot less than that. A minimum wage raises all those folks, gives them opportunity. It also raises middle class wages, helps us build out. I'll tell you something else I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to fight for the right to organize, and right to make sure that labor is always at the table and has a place at the table. And as I said the other day, if labor doesn't have a place at the table, you're on the menu, and I'm not going to let that happen. We are not going to let that happen. We're going through a tough time in the state, and we're going to make sure that, look, I champion the folks, our teachers, our firemen, our nurses, our cops, the people that took care of our families, took care of our kids. We respect these people. The first thing I do as governor, I'm going to go and say to each and every one of them, thank you for your service to our state. You've kept your commitment to us, and as your governor, I'm going to keep our commitment to you. Let me tell you a little bit about this race. You've got a couple decisions you've got to make. One is which Democrat gives us the best chance to win in November. And you're going to hear from some of the insiders, maybe it's somebody that's spent a lot of time in Hartford. And I heard that before during the Lieberman campaign. Lamont that hasn't spent much time in Washington. Well, I got to tell you, I think the way we're going to win in November is somebody who comes in, represents real bold change, represents a change in how we do business in Hartford, treats people with respect, but really gives the Democrats and gives our state a new start, a fresh start. That's how we're going to win. And by a fresh start, I mean a real change going forward. And that's how we're going to get the Senate blue again, and that's how we're going to keep a hold of the House of Representatives. We're not going to fight about the last 8 years. We're going to look forward to the next 8 and 18 years and make sure that this is a state where people know that they will have an amazing opportunity. I'll tell you, I've done that in my business. In my business, you need somebody who's not afraid to stand up and challenge the status quo. And I took on... Tenders? Who had tenders? that was easy. I took on the cable TV guys. I thought they were gouging the consumer. And we came up with a way that we provided a better service at less cost. We treated all of our team with great respect. We had good pay, great benefits. Everybody was with us for 35 years that we had that company. And that's what we need to do in Connecticut. Better service at less cost. We're going to stand up and take on the entrenched interests like we did in the Lieberman campaign. And we're going to treat everybody with respect going forward. That's how we win. That's how you have a Democrat elected this coming November. And you better have a Democrat elected. My God, if the Republicans come in and they turn this state Trump red, it's going to be a place you don't even recognize going forward. The last 7 or 8 years, I've been really working hard as a professor at Central Connecticut State University. Anybody go there? Any Central Connecticut? There you go. Some smart CCSU people here. And I've loved it. It was not in front of the camera, just quietly. We had Sal Luciano and Oz Grable. We had business and we had labor. We were talking about the big issues confronting the state of Connecticut, not how we paper over the deficit for the next 2 or 4 years, but really how we get the state going again. Want another one? And there's some common interest there. I'll tell you one thing. One thing I had to tell the business community is stop bad-mouthing the state of Connecticut. This is an amazing state. We have great workers, a great workforce. It's a beautiful state. We're geographically central to everything. Our strategic location should be an amazing advantage. We have a great university system. So stop bad-mouthing the state of Connecticut and get on board. Woo! And we're making progress there. They've agreed on a couple of big things. One, I don't know where Windsor and you folks think about this, but I think it's really important. We're going to invest in a transportation system. We're going to have a transportation system that has high-speed rail going from here and Hartford, Springfield, down to New Haven, down to Stamford, down to New York. Lots of development in and around the transportation hubs, a place where our young people want to be. Our kids know that this is a great place that they can call home. It's going to represent thousands and thousands of really good paying jobs, giving everybody a second chance, giving new people an opportunity to get on the rung of ladder of opportunity, and we're going to pay for it with electronic tolling. That's how we're going to be able to get this state going again, transportation and infrastructure. And the other thing I'm going to do and I heard this from labor and business, is we have thousands of good paying jobs that are going begging right now. We're not training the folks for the jobs that are out there, especially in advanced manufacturing. You know, Pratt Whitney, Sikorsky, and places like that. And I'm going to work like heck to make sure we have a community college system that is low cost or free so that we're training people for these jobs. I mean, I can tell you that Pratt Whitney now pays you $7,500 if you have a degree in, you know, in welding, laser welding, and things like that. I'm going to make sure that we're preparing people for the jobs, and they're not going begging. They're not going to go to Rhode Island, not going to go to New York. You know, Rhode Island, New York, community college is free. This is who we're competing against right now.
Somewhere in between.
Thank God, Al, you've finally seen the light. Those were our priorities. Look, I'll tell you what the business committee doesn't want. They don't want a handout. They don't want a gimme. They don't want a tax subsidy. That's not what they're asking about. They're saying, government, just take care of what you got to do. Educate our people for the 21st century. Make sure our young people have that opportunity going forward. And make sure we have a 21st century transportation system that works so people can get around and people can get to work. And get us an honest budget that doesn't borrow from the future, but invest in the future. And get that budget for us on time. So here in Windsor, we know that we're going to have a school system. We know how many teachers we're going to have. We know what the budget's going to be, and we can count on that. And it's not going to be easy. I'm not going to give you too much happy talk. We're going to have to make some really hard choices to come up with an honestly balanced budget going forward. And we've been papering it over and playing this game for a long time. And yes, I believe that we're going to need new revenues in order to come up with an honestly balanced budget. I'd be happy to talk about some of the strategies I have to do that. But more importantly, we're going to come up with an honest budget by working together. And so I just turned 64. Can't believe it, can you? About a month ago. And I'll tell you, there's something strangely liberating about it. I mean, I'm not doing this as a stepping stone. This is not my next gig. I'm not going out of Washington, D.C. But look, this is a state where I met Annie and Lindsay and Emily and Teddy were born. I started my business. You know, I love this state. As Liz said, I've had a chance to campaign and get to know each and every one of our 169 towns. Got a lot of friends who are here in this room. So I care about this state. I believe in this state. And that's why I'm, over the next 4 years, going to turn this around, get you an honestly balanced budget, and tell all those people who are giving up on Connecticut and think we have this cloud of pessimism, I'm going to make you believe in the state again. You know, all those moving vans that are going to Boston and going down to New York, I'm going to say, turn around. I'm going to tell those businesses that are thinking about quitting the state, I'm sticking, and I want you to stick too. That's my pledge to you. Look, I got in a little fight. A lot of the guys down at Fairfield County said, oh, Connecticut, they can't get their act together. I'm going down to Delray, Florida. I'm out of here. And I said on TV the other day, I can't think of any place more boring than Delray on a Thursday night. I'd rather be here drinking liberally with each and every one of you. That's it. What do you want to talk about?
All right, questions for Ned?
Congratulations on being 1 year closer to collecting Social Security.
Could you rephrase that somehow?
That depends on them not increasing
CCSU.
Social Security.
Yeah, CCSU. So you mentioned unions and your support of the unions. And one of my opinions is that not only do you have to be running against the Republicans, but you're going to have to be running against what Malloy has been, because he hasn't necessarily been pro-union, particularly public union members. So what are you going to? So my question is bigger than that, though. What are you going to do different than Malloy?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things. One, I'm a stiff from Greenwich, Connecticut, who's a strong believer in the right to organize and collective bargaining. And I will be a champion of that. You've got the Janus decision. You've got some bad stuff coming out of Washington, D.C. I will not let that happen in Connecticut. Number two, I would tell you, stop blaming the state employees. I mean, look, here's what happened. We, Low Weicker raised some revenue. We had some surpluses. And you know what they did with them? Did they put a dime into the pension fund? Did they invest in the pension fund? Did they do any of that? No. He handed out little gimmies to everybody. And I'll give a little defense to Dan Malloy. I mean, he did contribute, he did make the investments in the pension fund, which he should have done. He did do some reforms on pensions. And if John Rowland had done just half of what that was 20 years ago, we wouldn't be in this pickle today. And I'll tell you something else, just because we're friends here, and hopefully nobody's videoing me. But look, I love Jody Rell, but what she did was, you know, she didn't contribute a dime to the pension fund. She raised taxes, then she borrowed $1 billion, and then she moved to Florida because they said Connecticut can't get its fiscal house in order.
You give in one way, and you take back with furlough days. So.
Yeah. Look, all I can tell you is looking forward, I'm going to make sure that we honor our commitments. Look, I used to run the state pension board. I mean, I'm familiar with what the situation is. I know we've got some long-term liabilities we've got to work out. I also know that a commitment is a commitment. Yes, sir.
This crowd appreciated what you said, we need increased revenue. But as a candidate, I mean, what's the politics of that? How do you talk about that to the public at large? It feels like Democrats have been losing because we're branded as tax and spend liberals, and you know, and we've lost lots of seats in the legislature. So
I'll tell you what I hear. I hear from you know, wealthy guys in Fairfield County. I hear from business. I hear from teachers and mayors that the only thing worse than having to pay a little bit more is the fact that we haven't been able to get an honest budget for a long time, and every 2 years we go through budgetary hell in this state. And by the time we pass the budget 6 months late, it's already out of whack again. So what they've told me is, you know, folks down in Fairfield County, when it comes to the income tax, is, look, I'm willing to do the right thing and do a little bit more, but only if it's part of a real and permanent and sustainable solution. Not if you're going to come back every 2 years. And can I try out one other idea on revenues? I'd just love to get your feeling on it. We used to raise a lot of our money also off of the sales tax. The sales tax doesn't apply to very much of our economy, a lot less of our economy. And what it's doing right now is hammering those businesses on Main Street right here in Windsor. You know, the guy that used to sell the albums, the guys that used to sell the books, they've gone away, and e-commerce is taking over. And when you buy, you know, you used to pay 6% sales tax on when you bought an album, when you bought a CD. Now you download it off of Spotify, you don't pay a dime. Who had the French fries?
Just call it. A turkey burger and a blackened burger?
Right over there. So I'm not talking about raising rates, but I am talking about expanding the base on the sales tax to include digital downloads, to include e-commerce, so that you have a reliable, predictable revenue stream that can provide for, you know, state aid to education, which has been shortchanged, and provide, you know, early childhood education and after-school activities and cheaper community college. Those are the investments we've got to make. That, I think, plus e-tolling, which is perhaps another, you know, revenue stream, would provide us the revenues we need going forward to have an honest budget to invest in the future. But you got to convince the taxpayers that their money is being well spent. You know, that money's got to go to transportation infrastructure, and they got to be convinced that that black box is sacrosanct and people can't take it out. And I also mentioned something else. I said, as a business guy, I've spent a lot of time on how to deliver services more efficiently. And I got to convince the taxpayers that we're willing to take a fresh look at the delivery of those services so they know their money is being well spent. That's the balance I'm going to try and reach. Yes, sir.
I mean, I think we're all in support of, I don't speak for everybody, but, you know, yeah, we should close the tax loopholes in terms of, you know, sales tax and things, but I don't think that and tolling is enough to address the problem of income inequality in the state and the unfair taxation in our state. You know, income tax is one piece of it, but one of the ones that I'm most interested in is property tax rates and the huge discrepancy. You're from Greenwich, am I correct?
That's correct.
The lowest mill rate in the state is 14. It's about 30 in Windsor here. I'm from New Britain. It's 50.5. In Hartford, it's 70 something. I understand it's a function of property values, but the impact then is the people with the most need wind up paying the highest effective tax rate. And I don't think if we we address that issue, then we're going to be able to address the need for vibrant cities and economic development in cities, because the mill rates are too high and there's no guarantee that they're going to go down. So do you have a plan to adjust how we handle property tax to raise
Yeah,
taxes
we
and
over
raise-
rely on the property tax. Just about more than any other state, we rely too much on the property tax. And somebody pointed out something to me that I should have realized a lot earlier when I said, seniors on fixed income can't take that hit on the property tax every 2 years. But there's a lot of middle-class folks who are on a fixed income as well, so to speak. And state employees haven't had a raise in, 4 of the last 5 years. So that's why the property tax is so burdensome and so regressive. What do you do about it? One, I expand our tax base via the income tax, like I said, via the sales tax. We can fully fund pilot payment in lieu of taxes, fully fund ECS, our education formula, and maybe look at how we expand the property tax. Maybe you start with cars. Maybe you have a statewide property tax on cars, which reduces the cost of a property tax in a place like Windsor, raise it on the price of the automobile in Greenwich, so you start to level that out. And I'll give you one other idea, which, I don't know, maybe more complicated than you want, but right now the state, guarantees teacher pensions. And but a pension in Greenwich, Connecticut per teacher is about twice what it is in New Britain or maybe even Windsor. So maybe we guarantee up to that certain amount, and if Greenwich wants to pay the difference, they can pay the difference. So,
And the lowest paying part of the state, so.
okay, thank you. So there are a variety of ways that the wealthy can pay a little bit more that still keeps them in the state, still keeps them paying taxes, but is fair and starts reducing the burden on the property tax for the other communities. But you're right. I mean, I'll take a look at something else. I mean, half of Hartford is tax exempt. Half of New Haven is tax exempt. So if you don't pay pilot, maybe Yale New Haven Hospital pays a little more property tax, which would bring the tax rate down for everybody else in New Haven and make it a jobs magnet. So we got to think big on this. Yes, sir.
In 2016, 42% of the registered voters in this state were undeclared. So right now,
We're undeclared?
Undeclared.
Independence, yeah.
Independent, I'm told by the Secretary of State, is not supposed to be used because there is an independent party.
Okay, yeah.
But in any event, 42% of the people, and the fact that you don't have a lot of fresh blood coming in, suggests to me that the Democrats could lose the state because they're not offering anything. You're with kindred souls. You haven't said anything that any of us really disagree with. But in the general election, what can you offer to 42% that would get them off their asses to come to the voting booth and to get them to vote for you? And, I've heard people toss out things like, well, let's open up the primary. Extraordinarily close primary.
I think you got to give people something to believe in. In that Lieberman campaign, we had 44% of Democrats turned out and vote. It was enormous. We got more independents off their Barca lounger. They converted to Democrats. They stayed Democrats. It was enormous. And I got to tell you, and I blame myself on this. I had a primary with Dan Malloy 8 years ago, and the issues were not quite as inspiring. We were talking about the deficit and jobs, and we had half that number of people vote. We had half the number of people vote, and that was bad for democracy. Not great for me, by the way. I need a big turnout. That's what we do. But you got to give people a reason to get up and vote. And I got to tell you, this November, I give the Democrats the best chance to beat the Republicans. I come from a little different background. I know something about business. I know something about jobs. Labor knows that they can count on me. I think we have the coalition that allows us to win. And I think Donald Trump's going to give a lot of people incentives to know that their vote really matters this year. When it comes to labor, imagine what's going to happen to labor in the state if the Republicans take over. Imagine what's going to happen to the right to organize. Imagine what's going to happen to collective bargaining. Imagine what's going to happen to the sale of AR-15s. Imagine what's going to happen to the environment and natural gas dikes going up off of Guilford. I mean, these are all things that are possibilities anyway, you know, in a Trump world. And I haven't heard any of the Republicans in this campaign. They're not sort of moderate, old-fashioned Republicans. These are sort of Trumpy, at least in the primary. I think people have a real incentive to get up and vote, and they better.
Aren't you afraid? I've heard a lot of people talk about just running against Trump, okay? And my own personal take, is that people are fed up. Not only are they fed up with Trump, but they're fed up with the old machines offering worn out ideas and worn out old people. They want fresh faces.
Yep.
They want to get they want change. What can you offer that 42% is on its?
I think I can offer that this is an amazing state. We can turn it around. But you can't turn it around with the same old gang in Hartford that's been doing it sort of the same way for an awful long time. And some of the guys in Hartford get upset with me for saying that, but I say the best way for us to take the State House back is to make sure that we continue to be the party of change. And we're looking forward. And we know what the last 8 years and the last 18 years have been, but we're looking forward and we're going to turn this around and make people believe that it will make a difference. And that if I can't do that, I will do that. And we will get elected and we will turn this state around. I'm putting this in a positive way, but I got to convince you that your vote really matters. Nathan.
So you were running hard 8 years ago for governor. Jody Rell was governor, and Dan Moy won. How would you say Connecticut has changed in 8 years? There's the older generations are 8 years older. There's 8 years of
Thanks.
That's not positive.
There's 8 years of newer people who've come along who are now voters. So, but our economy's still in the dump. Okay, and no, that's not positive. But our economy's still in the dump. So, we're 8 years down the road. How do you see Connecticut as having changed from when you were running 8 years ago? And how have you and your ideas changed from 8 years ago?
8 years ago, we had people lined up at the unemployment lines going at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was desperate to do anything I could to put everybody back to work. Today, we're an economy that's getting left behind, Nathan, compared to some of our peers. But we have job shortages in a lot of different areas like advanced manufacturing, where you need a governor who can train people to make sure those jobs go to Connecticut people, good paying jobs for Connecticut people, and not elsewhere. But here's the other thing I learned. When I took on Malloy 8 years ago, we had a big debate. I said we've got an ongoing structural deficit. Hey, Joe, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
We have an ongoing structural deficit. We're going to need big changes in order to get this state out of the rut. If we don't make these big changes in how we raise revenues and how we deliver our services, we're going to be having the exact same debate in 2018 we had in 2010. And Nathan, I'm afraid we're having the same debate today. We still have $2 billion deficits as far as the eye can see. And in that way, my ideas haven't changed. I think Connecticut has changed. I really think people know we have to have a change agent, somebody who's ready to make those enormous changes we need to get this state back on track. That's what's really changed. Teacher, sorry. Friend, teacher.
What about just straight up raising taxes on the wealthy a bit, and also closing the carried interest loophole, because that's like $500 million right there.
What was that last one?
Closing the carried interest loophole, as Governor Cuomo has suggested to regionalize.
Yeah, we're going to work with Cuomo. We're going to work with the regional guys, see what we can do with the carried interest thing. It's not that much money, but we're going to do it because it's a matter of fairness. First of all, it's just ridiculous that Warren Buffett's secretary is paid at a higher rate than he is because of the capital gains rate. So that will change. And yes, as I said before, the wealthy will pay more, and there's just no way to get around that. But it's going to be part of a real and broad solution that honestly gets us to a balanced budget, so we don't have to go through budget hell every 2 years.
Can you give specifics on that? A little bit?
Yeah, I'd broaden the base and I'd raise the rate, so that millionaires pay a little more. You want a number? I can't give you a number.
I don't know.
No. No, what it's gonna be is based upon the negotiation going forward. But everybody's gonna be at the table, and the wealthy are gonna be at the front of that table. Liz?
So in terms of, Angie's question kind of opens us up a little bit. I actually wanted to have two questions. One of them is about, Governor Malloy's done some really good things around prisoner reentry and our prison population. Our prison population has gone down by like 4,000 people without any impact on public safety. And also the services to prevent them from going back have been greatly increased. You've done a lot. So I would just, ask that you look at and commit to containing some of the things that Malloy did around prisoner reentry and bail reform and all that. It's really good. Also in terms of regionalism, both regionally and within our state. Because the way that we have it set up now, within our towns and within our states, it's like a race to the bottom, right? You look at how all the states compete to get Amazon, and economic development is like, it comes at somebody else's expense. And also our cities, it's like we've taken the worst poverty, put it in a country, drawn a line around it, and said you tax your own way out of it, right? And you talk about pilot, that's great. So is there anything that you could do both within the state level to incentivize regionalism and get us to behave in a way where we can solve our problems better? And same thing interstate-wide, states have to work together too. It's the same race to the bottom.
Well, I think Dan deserves a lot of credit, first of all, what we've done on justice reform in this state. And I would take it one step further. I would legalize pot. I just think it's so crazy that we're setting. Do you like that idea?
No, not because I want to, but because besides we've waited too long. We've lost the tax revenue we would get with Massachusetts and Rhode Island going ahead of us.
Yeah, but it's unfairly applied, and the wrong people go to jail. They go to jail for the wrong reasons. We're going to let these folks out. They're going to get a new opportunity.
Would you look back at people who have already been sentenced?
Say it again?
Would you look back at people who have already been sentenced for crimes that would now be legalized?
Yes, I think I would. Yeah, well, give these people out, give them an opportunity, and absolutely. What was the second question, Liz?
Regionalism. How do you disincentivize that race to the bottom that we have now? It's really
I say two things. As I said before, Connecticut's a small state. We're half the size of Brooklyn, New York. I mean, so I would centralize, at least give state, towns an opportunity to purchase through a consortium, do healthcare through a consortium, do 911 through the consortium, lots of different ways that we can centralize that. But I go even further than that. I mean, I'm afraid we have a diminishing student population in a lot of our small and mid-sized towns. And I would fully fund magnet schools that address, more than one community. And I'll give a lesser amount to somebody that insists on having a school just for themselves. So there are ways that you can give incentives that promote regionalization, for example, in education. So you have a high school that serves 4 communities, not 4 high schools that serve each of their own communities. It's tough because everybody loves their own local system. There's no question about it. We just cannot afford it anymore. But I'm going to give each of these towns an option. Yes?
How would you like to fund Medicaid, considering the fact that right now $54 million has been taken from the program, and I am working on the coalition, which is out of Hartford, trying to get that money restored. So I'd like to know how you would like to help restore it.
Well, I probably should talk to you and
Don't let anybody else go.
What I can fundamentally say is I'm proud of the fact that Obama's Medicaid expansion under Obamacare, we took advantage of that. We're going to continue to fund that. We're going to have the revenues to do that. I can't stand the fact that we're beginning to cut back on Medicaid eligibility and cut back on the services there. And I will do everything I can at the national level to promote a single-payer system. I think a single-payer system. And I say this as a business guy. I mean, small businesses get crushed. It's folks can't afford it otherwise. We can deliver healthcare at a lot better cost and much better service for people on a single-payer basis. And here in Connecticut, I'll do everything I can to allow small business and individuals to buy into a larger and larger pool.
What about just within Connecticut? Massachusetts did it.
And they had Romney Care in Massachusetts, and we'll look at that as a model. Absolutely.
Can you expand some on education? So you sort of waved a wand and said, oh, we need better vocational education. The challenge is a lot deeper than that, in terms of the hardcore engineering and sciences skills. The collection of universities in the state, frankly, are not at a competitive level with other regions in the country. And without that core base, you're never gonna get the young people who are gonna be searching the jobs or the creating the new companies, and you won't get that cycle going. And we're throwing people out instead of pulling them in.
I'll tell you what I did the last 2 years. I talked to every major employer in the state. And I said, what are your job needs today, and what are your job needs 5 and 10 years from now? And they gave me some pretty interesting advice. And they said, first and foremost, don't downplay liberal arts. I want somebody who's prepared to learn, ready to learn, and I'll teach them the necessary skills they need. And then they went further, and then we had certain very specific skills that they need in advanced manufacturing. And then I took that to the community colleges, and I went to Mark Ajakian, who oversees all this, and I went to Goodwin College, and I said, this is what I hear from the business community, the jobs we need. So for Pratt & Whitney, we came up with a program where they're gonna pay students to take certain classes. And that's where, I mean, we can't pay for everything ourselves, but the business community is ready to weigh in,
Yeah,
provide some of the training necessary to do this.
But we're primarily a service economy. There are only so many manufacturing jobs to go around. We have Pratt, which is a big concentration, but the insurance companies in the state.
I brought Travelers to Central Connecticut State.
Okay.
Travelers came to Central, and we all thought, oh my God, insurance, it's a bunch of guys with green eye shades, and they're doing a lot of actuarial stuff. No, it's IT, it's technology, it's the Amazon of insurance. Sorry to use Amazon. And that's what we have to do. We have to introduce young people to how a lot of these jobs are vibrant, interesting, they pay well with great benefits. And so we now have a program at Travelers in CCSU where we hire about 25 people a year, I think.
But you need to
Check
make
that number.
But you need to make that 25,000.
It's not even that big a school.
How does it scale?
Well,
I just wanted to mention that UConn is a top 20 state university in this country.
yeah.
Sometimes higher than that, so we just don't talk down about it.
No, we're proud there. Couple more questions, yes, because I'm finishing my beer.
So, every one of the candidates that's come here to talk, all have talked about community college and getting young people into community college for advanced manufacturing. What about, do you have any ideas about taking the 40 and over people and retraining?
They are doing that.
Okay.
I know somebody from Windsor that just got a welding degree or the manufacturing certificate with her son.
Okay.
And she just started at Pratt.
Oh, that's great, but I don't know if you have any ideas about harnessing, like, people who maybe their skills have not kept up with technology and retraining.
Broadly, what I can tell you is this. We have a great workforce, and it's an aging workforce, and they are retiring, and our population is not growing. So I can tell you as a liberal, I want each and every person to have an opportunity, that kid from the inner city, that 40-year-old who's in a transition. And I can also tell you as a business person, we need these people rolling up their sleeves and at work every day. It's the best investment we can make. So how I work with the community colleges, I'll talk to you in terms of how we can make those programs outreach and part of job retraining for people in their 40s. And I got to do that in state government as well. I mean, we have a sort of a static workforce right now. We need to keep retraining these people so they have IT skills. I mean, our technology, you know this, Dave. I mean, we got an old COBOL system, don't we?
Our IT support is embarrassing.
Yeah.
It is embarrassing. We use Windows, Windows 8, Microsoft Office from 2013.
I thought we had a proprietary COBOL system that dated back to the 90s.
A little bit beyond that, but I believe that our IT people do not get training. I think that is true.
Well, what about the whole consolidating the CSU system with the community colleges?
All right, I'm going to leave it on that. So,
Yeah.
I support.
This is what my vote's going to come down on. I'll tell
Oh,
you.
jeez, I better get this right.
No, I'm not alone.
I believe in local control of our community colleges. You know, we can share administrative burdens, we can share computer service, but I'll tell you one other reason. Because the president of that community college knows all the local businesses in that area. They reach out to the business. They can create programs that meet those needs better than some centralized person at the Board of Regents. Let me tell you what's going on. I need all your help. We've got a convention coming up in May. And what worries me is that we're going to have 5 or 6 folks. We're going to be a bit of a mess. We're going to go into a primary in a hot day in August with 5 or 6 people going, and we have a bitter primary going. Then it's a tougher row for us to hoe against the Republicans in November. So I'd love it if each and every one of you decided who in Windsor, who in the other towns you think is really good. Talk to folks on the town committees. Talk to folks who may be delegates, and see if you can line up between 1 or 2 candidates. I hope one of them is named Ned, by the way. So we come out sort of unified from this convention in May, because I can guarantee you there's a lot of money coming in from the Republicans. They're really working hard, trying to change this state around, and we're not going to let that happen. And at the end of the day, we're going to win because we fundamentally are optimistic about this state. We believe this state has got an opportunity for our kids, an opportunity for small business, an opportunity for everybody who wants to stay here. And if I can't convince you of that, we don't deserve to win. So I hope I've convinced you of that this is where you want to be. I'm sticking, and I hope you are too. Thanks, everybody.